Hey, welcome. Today we're unpacking one of the most powerful tools a citizen has, judicial review. It's your guide to challenging decisions when public authorities get it wrong. Let's get right into it.
Here's our roadmap. We'll kick things off with why this even exists. Then we'll dive into the three main legal arguments you can use. After that, we'll look at what the court can actually do, the really important rules you have to follow, and we'll wrap up with why this whole thing is so crucial for everyone.
All right, first up, when power gets it wrong. Look, we've all had that moment, right? Dealing with some official body. You follow every rule, and you still feel like you've just hit a brick wall. That exact feeling is why judicial review exists. So let's put you in the situation. You've jumped through every hoop they've put in front of you. You filled out every form, and then the decision comes back, and it just feels wrong. Not just disappointing, but fundamentally unfair, maybe even illegal. What on earth are you supposed to do then? Let me give you a real-world example. There was this company, Clear Channel, that put in a bid for a government contract. They lost, but they had this nagging feeling that something about the process itself was off. They couldn't shake it, and that feeling is precisely what opens the door to judicial review. So what actually is judicial review? Well, you can think of it as the high court acting like a supervisor, looking over the shoulder of public bodies to make sure they're playing by the rules. It's not about the court remaking the decision. It's about checking the homework to make sure it was done lawfully, fairly, and rationally. It really is the ultimate check on public power. And this is an absolutely critical distinction to get. Judicial review is not the same as an appeal. An appeal is all about the outcome. Was it the right call? But judicial review is all about the process. Was the decision made in the right way? The court is like a referee. It's not there to play the game or decide who should have won. It's there to blow the whistle when there's a foul. Okay, so you can't just go to court because you don't like a decision. That's not enough. You need a specific legal reason. The best way to think about this is that you have a legal toolkit. And in that toolkit, there are three main tools you can use. First up in our toolkit is illegality. And honestly, it's as straightforward as it sounds. The core question here is, did the public body break the rules? In legal speak, this is often called acting ultra vires. It's a fancy Latin term that just means beyond the powers. See, every public body is given its power by law, and that power has limits. If they step outside those boundaries, if they do something they don't have the legal authority to do, they're acting illegally. Simple as that. And this brings us right back to that Clear Channel case. This is exactly what the court found. The ruling was crystal clear. If the law lays out a specific procedure, you have to follow it. There are no shortcuts, no excuses. The procedure must be observed. Okay, tool number 2 in our kit is irrationality. This one is for those decisions that are, well, just completely off the wall. The ones that make absolutely no logical sense whatsoever. Now, you have to know the bar for proving this is incredibly high. We're not just talking about a bad decision. We're talking about a decision so outrageous, so defiant of logic, that no reasonable authority looking at the same facts and the same law could have possibly come to it. It's a standard that comes from a famous case called Wensbury. And here it is, the very quote that set this high bar. Lord Greene's words from the Wensbury case really capture how extreme a decision has to be. So, yeah, it's a tough one to prove, for sure. But when a decision is truly irrational, it's a vital check. And that brings us to our third and final tool, procedural impropriety. This one isn't about the substance of the decision itself, but all about how that decision was made. It's about fairness. The absolute key word here is fairness. This idea taps into ancient legal principles called the rules of natural justice. Things like the right to be heard. You have a right to tell your side of the story. If you're not given that chance, the process itself is fundamentally unfair. End of story. And you know what? This is a huge deal. As this landmark quote makes clear, if a decision is made without a fair process, it can be declared null and void. A fair hearing isn't just a nice to have, it's a non-negotiable cornerstone of the law. So, let's say you've made your case using one of those three grounds, and you win. What happens next? Well, this is where the court pulls out its special powers. They're called prerogative remedies. Let's break these down real quick. Certiorari is an order to quash. It basically cancels or voids the unlawful decision. Mandamus is an order to compel. It forces the public body to do the job the law says it has to do. And prohibition is an order to forbid. It stops a public body dead in its tracks before it makes an unlawful decision. These are the court's big tools for setting things right. Now, hold on. Before you even think about heading to court, you need to know that there are some very, very important rules of the game. Judicial review isn't a free-for-all. There are strict conditions you have to meet.
First, you have to show that you have sufficient interest. That means you have to have a personal stake in this. You need to be directly affected. You can't just challenge a decision on behalf of someone else. And second, judicial review is almost always a last resort. You have to show the court that you've already tried every other available option, like an internal appeal.
And now we come to maybe the single most important rule of them all. It's a number that can make or break your entire case before it even starts.
3 months. That is your window. From the moment the grounds for your application arise, you have a strict 90-day time limit to file your case. It is a notoriously tough deadline. If you miss it, you are almost certainly out of luck.
So, after all that, why should we care? Why does this whole complicated process matter so much? Because it's about something much, much bigger than any single decision. It's about upholding the rule of law itself. I think this quote just says it all, doesn't it? At its heart, the entire purpose of judicial review is to make sure that the individual, that you, receive fair treatment from the state. It's about keeping power in check and making sure that nobody is above the law. So, judicial review is how the courts hold power to account. It's a fundamental check in our system. And that leaves us with one final thought. If this is the court's check on power, what are yours?